recording secretary, we will get started.
That sounds strange.
She said basketball here. What water?
Yeah, they were out downstairs.
Is he doing it Monday through Wednesday?
Monday through Friday.
Okay, so you know
He's at Lewis.
teaching Bishop.
Are you
Up at West Road. Where it starts from, man. They bring the kids up there.
Oh, okay.
Let me know whenever you're ready.
I had Jack Benny.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
The little girls were doing it. So
Nick
Bishop.
and who was the technical people?
Mr. Alajakis, Ms. Hannah has a question related to the video.
Yeah, I have been getting complaints that that the Waukegan school staff cannot get on YouTube from their school devices, and they want to watch the meetings too, but their school issued devices won't allow them to connect with YouTube to watch the meetings live. And I expressed to them that I would ask the question, and hopefully you all would be able to do something to correct that or explain why they can't get on YouTube.
I can talk to our IT. So we've had that issue with some staff in the past, and we've sent out some directions on probably using YouTube, but I can talk with IT on that, because I have heard from staff members time to time that's an issue with their official device.
Yeah, and so if they can't get on YouTube, are the meetings being televised or live on Facebook? They're not? Oh. Oh.
Yeah, what I said on that, there are instructions so that we can, there are instructions.
We're good now, testing. All right. There are instructions that we can facilitate to the staff members. Changing the browser will resolve the issue. So if they're using Google Chrome, they will have some limitations. If we change the browser, they will have no problems. And we can resend those instructions to the staff.
What
Yeah.
browser is acceptable?
Internet.
Firefox.
Firefox. Okay.
Okay, and so it would be, I think it would be, I don't know, just a great gesture for our staff to be told how to connect with the board meetings.
Sure, we can facilitate instructions.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, it's well past 6. I would like to call to order the Operational Service Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Yes, and Ms. Gonzalez is not here. We do still have a quorum. I do want to state the date. It's June 21st, 2022, which I didn't do in a call to order. It is 6:24 p.m. Next up is our approval of minutes for the May 17th, 2021 OSC meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Just for those who may not attend often, this is our Operational Services Committee meeting. Deputy Moulton will walk us through the agenda. There are presentations, but there are also attachments. So we'll go through some. So some are for discussion items, some are for information items. If you have a question, I ask that you raise your hand. I'll call on you, and you can ask questions relative to the agenda. and address the board at that time. So first up, we have 4A, which is a discussion item for men of color in educational leadership. Deputy Moten.
Thank you, Board President Ewing, Superintendent, board members, staff, community members in person and who are watching online. Our first agenda item, which is going to be a presentation, and obviously as we go through this, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. But our first presentation is Men of Color in Educational Leadership. Now this is a committee, a group that the superintendent of schools is on their advisory committee. This is something that she engaged me with about 4 years ago, where this is an opportunity for men of color in educational leadership to be their authentic selves and also to get some professional coaching. Professional and personal coaching. Professional growth and emotional stability is something that this group is all about. This last year in December of 2021, I had an opportunity to attend an annual convening with the Men of Color in Educational Leadership, along with Mr. Clarence Berry, Area Superintendent, Mr. Dan Hill, Principal at Washington Campus, who wasn't able to be here this evening, as well as Mr. Isaac Kirkwood, Principal at Jack Benny Middle School. I'm going to go through the presentation, and we do have a short video within this presentation at the end, as well as I'm going to ask Mr. Berry to make a few comments a little bit later on. Next slide, please. All right, so the Men of Color in Educational Leadership, which I'll call MCEL from here on out, has a mission statement. And they are committed to fostering and enhancing the skill development of male leaders of color to better their success and influence on change and by gaining access to advancement opportunities. The acronym MCEL stands for Mentorship, Coaching, Empowerment, and Leading. Next slide, please. These are some core items within the mission of MCEL. It's to build capacity and provide support for organization to meet the unique needs of male leaders of color. A lot of times, male leaders of color struggle with being a perception of something that they may or may not be. Sometimes there are assumptions made about them when they walk in a room. So they conduct themselves in a certain way that may not be their true authentic selves, but they do that in order to survive within a professional environment. Another part of the mission is to empower leaders of color to work in an authentic state, to leverage core values and beliefs, and to allyship opportunities, not just for themselves, but advancement opportunities for others, as well as to set a positive example and have allyship for their students. And lastly, to bring men of color in educational leadership together to grapple with present-day challenges to effectively navigate and bring about positive change. We all have our role models. We all want to see ourselves in who's in front of us, whether it's in a classroom, perhaps it could be at a Board of Education meeting, perhaps it's an assembly. We're talking about the educational environment, and a leader is not defined as somebody with a title. A leader is somebody who has responsibility and has the ability to affect change. So at this last convening, and this list I have on the screen here is individuals who have spoke at previous convenings. This group has not been established for a long time, about 5 to 6 years, but these are some of the individuals who have spoken and given their stories, their personal experience, whether they've had an impact in their lives professionally or personally, and through the lens of male leaders of color. And majority of these male leaders of color are African American or Latino. We have John King, the CEO of EdTrust and former U.S. Secretary of Education under the Obama administration. Dr. Daniel Velasco, who's the CEO of Latinos for Education. Dr. Joseph Davis, the superintendent of Ferguson-Flossmoor School District. And if you all recall, Ferguson is the school district where the incident with Michael Brown took place. So you have a black male superintendent where a black male individual, a teenager, was shot by a police officer. Of course, he had to think about himself as a father, but also as a superintendent in that situation. We also have Mr. Robert Runcie, the former superintendent of Broward County Schools. Broward County Schools is where we had the Parkland situation, one of the largest school districts in the country. He spoke on his personal experience with that, how it affected him personally, how it affected his health, the abuse he took verbally from the media and from his own governing body with that school district. Mr. Edgar Palacios, President and CEO of Latinx Education Collaborative, and finally Dr. Donald Fenoy, the former superintendent of Palm Beach County. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to show a short snippet. It's about 10 minutes total, but we're going to show about 3 to 3.5 minutes of a presentation he gave to his Board of Education on Zoom that was picked up by national media in June of 2020 after the incident with George Floyd. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Berry to talk a little bit about his experience at the last convening.
Last year, in stepping into this new role, it was an eye-opening experience. I had the opportunity to go to 4 different conferences. I would say this was one of the top most impactful one. As we listened to other peers and mentor pour into us, these were some great speakers. They took us through some great dynamics, of course, with all of the things that were going on with the nation last year. Also, it gives us an opportunity, and we want our students to also look and see men of color leading. That is something that is lacking in most educational settings, and we need to set this as a precedent and a role model. We want them to have something to look up to, our young men, to see that they can strive to be whatever they choose to be. So I just wanted to let the board know it was very impactful. It was a great learning, and we would like to see it move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. So here's a few data points they provided, and we want to share that with you. As we build the bench and we try to increase capacity and quality and quantity of male leaders of color within Waukegan School District and the Waukegan community, these are some of the things we know. Community engagement is higher. Fewer students are identified as needing special education services. Schools are safer for the most marginalized, and this just isn't necessarily physically safer, but also emotionally safer. There's more frequent hiring and retention of teachers of color. And there's better outcomes for students of color, including higher math scores and higher likelihood of placement into gifted programs. And this information is based on data that they saw with all the school districts where they have cohorts. Next slide, please. Quality, quantity, and care, excuse me. These are 3 of the primary tenets of MCEL, and I want to read them to you. It's to equip men of color with leadership skills, knowledge, and the system of support to lead complex organizations that drastically improve the success of students. Quantity, representation matters. Increase the number of men of color in educational leadership. Classroom, principalships, assistant principalships, central office staff, and other various leadership opportunities that have an impact on our school district specifically. And then care, supporting male leaders of color in navigating the unique challenges they face by creating safe, healing spaces which supports being their authentic selves. And I will say on this last point, a lot of the authentic conversation that takes place is it might impact me a little differently, or Mr. Berry a little differently, if we see black male students having behavioral issues versus somebody else. It's not to say that we don't all care, but at one point in time, I was that child needing counseling services, mental health services, especially when my parents went through a divorce, and there are others that have other trauma in their lives. We have to see something. We have to see something in ourselves, and somebody has to push us to get us to a situation, the situation we're at today. But I saw that situation 30 years ago, clear as day, and that means something to me.
Hey, Ms. Ann, I'm just going to ask if you can write your question down until the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So the benefits of a Waukegan chapter, and what we're going to ask to do is we want to transition this model, the MCEL model, that's at the national level, and it's been done at other locations throughout the country, most recently a chapter created in Fresno, California. We want to model that here in Waukegan, where we have individuals such as myself, Mr. Berry, Mr. Hill, and Mr. Kirkwood that will be starting this, will be gaining coaching from the national model, and would like to implement an MCEL chapter here in Waukegan, where we can implement all of the things that we've learned at the national level and manage it here at our level. So we want to network across the country, create a caring space for men of color to be their authentic self, develop leadership capacity that supports quality men of color in leadership roles, increase the quantity of men of color in leadership pipeline. We want to have sustainability and continuity. This cannot just stop with us. We want to continue it. And to facilitate individual and group discussion opportunities to grapple with present-day challenges to effectively navigate and lead to bring about positive change. Again, you heard the words from Mr. Berry. Unfortunately, the other two couldn't be here this evening, but they truly were impacted by this. Individuals from across the country that hold a variety of educational positions, whether it's in finance, business, human resources, classroom teachers, diverse learners, some other individuals call special education. They were represented with this group of individuals. So a variety of experiences, personal and professional, to relate to. Now our last slide shows, our last slide is the video clip. I would just ask Mr. White if we could do about 3.5 minutes of this, not necessarily show the whole thing. And this is linked into the PowerPoint that's on the agenda, so you have an opportunity to see it yourself if you'd like. Yes, yes, please.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the community. I felt like it was.
Sorry, if I could just do a little brief intro here. Dr. Donald Fenoy is on the middle panel on the left-hand side of your screen. He's the superintendent at the time of Palm Beach County, which I believe was the 8th largest school district in the country. And this was about 2 weeks after the George Floyd situation. Everybody was doing virtual meetings at that time, board meetings, committee meetings, etc. Now, being a superintendent in a school district of, I don't know, I think it's around 400,000 students, there are certain expectations that come with it, certain ways you conduct yourself in front of the public. In this particular board meeting, he introduced it, and he actually disarmed himself, as I would call it, and he let them see his true self, where he's from, who he is, not the person that they see in front of the podium. So, thank you. Go ahead and play it.
Absolutely important for me to make comments today prior to the start of the board meeting in reference to the killing of Mr. George Floyd. And you know, as over the last 2 weeks, as I have processed this reality, it has become clear to me that, you know, in my role as the superintendent of the 10th largest school district in the country, there are certain responsibilities that I bear to be a catalyst for change. But I also believe that in this moment, I, for the first time in my career, need to be fully honest around my experiences as a black man in America, especially with the reality of the duality that I possess, meaning walking in multiple worlds. For me, I am a highly accomplished, very successful young black man. My sisters do not enjoy the same privileges that I have, and so I want to just talk about the realities of who I am through my experience as a father. And so I can tell you right now that I'm hurt, I am devastated, I am scared, I am a lot of things that I really have never really articulated. But this community was first introduced to me, or I purposely introduced myself to this community through the lens of my child, my son, Donald Fenoy III, who many of you saw hold the Bible when I was sworn in after this board took a chance on me. But what you don't know about me are all the decisions that I live with daily as it relates to raising this young man who's getting bigger and bigger every single day. And I think the journey to help people understand why this is so traumatic. So being who I have not always been this well-polished, suit-wearing person. I was a child like everyone else, and as a child you make mistakes and you grow up. Things happen. Unfortunately, based on generational issues, I was taught to endure certain things and just push forward. But now I'm in a place where something more must happen. The other day, Bob Hatcher, one of our amazing principals, was on a call with me, and he said, Dr. Fenoy, the other day when you came by my house, you brought your son. And he was cooking some food. And he said, when Mr. Floyd's situation occurred, he was talking to his children, and his thought was, how is Dr. Fenoy going to talk to his son about the killing of George Floyd? First of all, I was proud of him for even acknowledging that my conversation would be different. But let me say this, what you don't know is that this is a constant, continuous, for 11 years since the day he was born, worrying about him. So being a privileged man, I have taken the choice to protect my children as much as I can from the very harsh realities of this world. I bought a home considering simple facts. So let me share this with you, and bear with me. Every day I ask my son to go to the mailbox, either ride his bike or I take him up there. And I sit in the car with him and I say, Donald, when you go to that mailbox, because in our neighborhood, it's in a central location, it's not at our homes. I say, I need you to be respectful, I need you to speak to people, I need you to open doors. So the vast majority of American society would say, those are good things that you should teach your children. But what I never shared with him, and I'm sharing for the first time, is not just because I wanted to be polite and have pleasing behaviors that make everyone else comfortable. Honestly, it's so that when he walks around my neighborhood by himself, someone will not call the police on him because he doesn't look like he belongs there. People will identify him as someone who belongs in that community, so that I can have some sort of peace to know that he can go ride his bike and someone will see this boy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. White. So, again, that's on the PowerPoint, that's on this agenda item. Just wanted to give you a snippet. It went a little bit longer than I was planning, but wanted to give you a snippet. So, the experience that he expressed being in that position and being vulnerable are the discussions we have at this convening. And this is not to take away from any initiatives or priorities. All of our students need to be reached in a certain way, as well as our staff members, but this is just one of several avenues where we hope to be able to build the bench, build the capacity of our current men of color, and also advancement opportunities to provide them access and opportunity, if they choose to be in that leadership role and make sure they're supported in their endeavors in District 60.
Ms. Anna?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad that this was clarified, the men of color, okay? But my question is, how many men of color are in this school district? That's one.
Okay.
And number two, are all of the men of color in this district going to be a part of men of color in leadership? Okay? And it's, it is kind of a little late, kind of, sorta, because we have lost several men of color out of our school district that would have been excellent with this initiative. Okay, and my third question, how are you and what are you all going to do to increase men of color in the district as employees? Because our largest group of men of color, minority men, are in kind of the lowest positions. Our safety staff, our food service, and so I guess I am asking those questions because I would like to know if you're going to do this initiative for just about $73,000, how expansive will it be?
Yeah.
And who's going to be involved? And I certainly hope not 4 men.
No, those are excellent questions, Ms. Hannah. So your first question, as far as how many men of color are in the district, that's not a number I have this evening. I would have to come back to you with that.
I'd
Looking
love
at
to get it.
throughout the whole district. So that's an excellent question. So we have the 4 individuals that have been involved. What we want to do is we want to build a chapter here. We are all leaders, as I said earlier. We all need examples. We all need support. We all need coaching. So what we envision with the proposal that you just identified is that the 4 individuals would start a chapter, and obviously it would expand and grow over time. But we want to make sure that we're providing support and resources for the 4 individuals initially, so we're equipped, and then we would expand from there.
And
At
so
the
how
school
long
level
is
and
this
at
gonna
central
take?
office.
How long is that going to take? 2 years? 6 months? 3 months?
The sooner the better, but we can't roll it out if it's not effective, because then we won't be able to sustain it.
Okay. Ms. Johnson had her hand up.
I saw Ms. Johnson, and then I thought I saw Ms. Fulton before. So I'll go with Ms. Johnson and Ms. Fulton.
Well, I'm glad you said the cost, but is there any, I see this is out of state, is there any?
And I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, I don't want to interrupt you, but because I got that comment about sound in the boardroom, I'm going to ask them to give you the microphone.
Thank you. My question is there anything in the Illinois area? I know that there is a Obama men group also, so have you all looked into other, such as this here, that may be in this Illinois area, maybe somewhere closer? Have you all challenged anything else than that cost? Because the numbers here of men of color are very limited. And that cost is really a lot. So what I'm asking is, can we look at some other avenues of such as an organization like this here? Because we know we have brung other things here, and it's sometimes work and sometimes don't. So right now, with that cost, can we put some others on the table also and get some similarities of what's going to be served?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I did want to make this point, and I think this might have been what the superintendent was going to mention, is in educational leadership, professional development is that there's several opportunities for professional development as it relates to skills and competencies within certain areas. But one thing that was unique about this that we found is that specifically in educational leadership, the individuals living the experience are the one giving the content, and it's not just professional, it's personal as well. So that is something that was certainly unique. We thought we could benefit from. Even though this is national, there are individuals in the Chicagoland area that are affiliated with this particular organization that we could utilize as a resource if this were to be approved and we move forward.
Ms. Fulton?
I know this is in its infancy stage, Mr. Merton, but does, I think Ms. Hannah was kind of alluding to, does the MCL focus on how to get the men through the door, you know, in order to create more leadership opportunities? Because studies show that most men of color that do come through the door, because of the non-equity minded questions during the interview process, they can't even get past the interview process.
Absolutely.
So I do know that they are working with the 1,000 is it the principal pipeline? And what institute is that with? It's not coming to me right now. It's in North Carolina.
It's in North Carolina as well as Washington, D.C., I believe.
Yeah, I can't think of it, but I'll come back to you, Yvonne. It's probably going to come to mind right now. But what MCEL focuses on, it focuses on men in educational leadership. So superintendents, associate superintendents, principals. It gives them a space to come together across the country to talk about leadership opportunities and some challenges that they face, and it's a safe space. LeBaron has been going now for 4 years. Is it 4 or 5 now? It's probably 5, right?
I think
Yeah,
4.
because 4 years. And we have included others. What our goal here is, their goal is, because this is their initiative, is to bring a chapter that is based in Illinois. And though I do know other people go to the events, but this would be the first chapter in Illinois that would be stationed in Waukegan. And their hopes would be to grow this throughout Lake County and throughout the state, so that men of color, it's not only now African American men, it first incepted as just African American men, it's men of color now, that they all get to come together in that space to discuss opportunities and how they can work together, strategize, brainstorm. Last week I was not here at the board meeting on Tuesday because I do sit on the National Advisory Committee, where we were baking out competencies for an assessment that will be backed by professional development at the national level for MCEL throughout the United States and the chapters that they are working with. And as Mr. Moulton said, Fresno is one of their new commitments. So this is a really good thing for our leaders in our districts, so that they can have that space and we can promote them. But it is a very targeted audience. So our principals, our associate soups, and of course our deputy, Mr. Moulton, that is leading this endeavor.
And do you have another question, Ms. Hannah?
Yeah,
Can you talk in the microphone, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just a comment, and I get the MCEL chapters all over, right? But I'm going to stick to what I said originally. That okay, you all are going to do it for men, right here. What about the other men? There's men of color in leadership roles here. So are they going to be included too? You got Mr. Wilson. You have
We have several.
okay, but then also, what would be wrong to mold, if you will, the chapter here to include all men of color in the district? That means all men of color. It doesn't matter if they're up here, it doesn't matter if they're down here. And maybe they want to get into leadership roles in the future. So
I can answer that, Ms. Hannah, I hear you, but that is not what this organization is about. So there could be other mentoring avenues, but MCEL would not fit that model at this point. It is a growing organization, and they have a specific targeted focus. Please look it up.
I'm aware.
But the chapter here would support 7 to 8 individuals for the upcoming year. The focus will be the deputy, the associate soups, and any principals that we have men of color in. That would be the targeted focus that LeBaron would lead with this chapter.
So, and I think, go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo. Yeah, positive.
I like this program, and I understand that it is targeted audience. Now, I'd like to understand if there is a vision for being an inclusive all men's program besides the dogs that we have, which is dads of great students. Is there another program that is not targeted towards men of color, but all men in our school district? As we know, men in education field is very low in our district. I think we're like at 25%, give or take, of men just in education in general, I think it is. But anyways, is there a program that you guys are looking at in the future to be more inclusive of all men in our district?
So I can't say right now that we are looking at that. This is an equity issue right now, and it's how we support our staff. So I'm not going to say one size fits all. And we also have, I believe at the year's 2030, that we will see that there will be an extinction of black men that are actual leaders in the educational system. And this is how do we support them? This is how do we grow that pipeline? And so this is what their targeted focus is. And so, no, I cannot say that those conversations are taking place right now. This is specific to our men of color that are in leadership at the, I would say, the district leadership level and at the school-based level.
And just, you know, I know that this is the leadership program, but as we're talking about, I mean, you mentioned the potential extinction of men of color in education, right? What avenues do we have for our students to expose our young men, students of color, to the educational field? And if are we looking into including that in our, I know we have our 4-year high school plan, but didn't know if that was addressed in there specifically.
So I'm going to say not in the MCEL chapter, but we will note your question and come back with that. What they asked from Mr. Moulton is around MCEL and creating a locally based chapter that would support the men of color in our district. That's the ask now. So, yeah, the question you have is a great question, and we will come back with that about, and a great question on how are we creating the pathways for future teachers. I mean, that's, you know, I believe it used to be called Future Teachers of America. I'm looking at the teachers, wasn't it? Is that an old term? I don't know. But there used to be a pathway where students could opt in to be teachers, police officers, firefighters, to specific pathways. So we can take that as we build that out. You know, there's a lot of research on what will those pathways be about. And so that question can be added there.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions, Board President.
I don't really have a question. I just want to say I think this is a good program, and
I'm sorry,
I
Mr.
support
Riddle,
it.
can you talk into the microphone?
Oh, so not, okay. I don't really have a question. I'm just saying that I believe this is a good program. I think our leaders, men of color, need this support, and I'm glad to see that we're using it to organize in this area. I know we do have a program, I think, isn't it still available for our children when we have Men of Vision program? That's still in some of our middle schools. It was. Not right now. We need to get that going too again. I think there needs to be programs like that all the way down the line. It's Ms. Hannah saying, but this is a good start for our leaders, and our leaders, you know, can move forward with this. I support this. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fulton, it's the Hunt Institute. So look at the pipeline there, and they do a lot of work with MCEL.
And so I want to capture what was said. So we talked about a bunch of different issues. So the first issue that I heard from Ms. Hannah related to how do we create mentorship opportunities for all men in our district. I understand that that is not what MCEL is, but I hope that we take that away with what can we do to support men of color, and are there other programs, mentorship opportunity, networking events, even with inside District 60 that we can implement, even under the leadership of a lot of those individuals that are in MCEL. Because the same way we talk about our students looking up to other individuals, it was me seeing black CEOs, black VPs fighting, right? It's because at the organization in which I work for, until the death of George Floyd, we had nobody who was a senior VP or higher, right? And so that was something that we challenged, that we called out, and now we have 3. And that gives younger individuals that are in those careers something to aspire to. And I believe that is what Ms. Hannah is saying, is how do you open it up? And maybe that's something that is a core part of you all's chapter, which I also heard in Ms. Fulton's remarks and Ms. Johnson's. Ms. Johnson more, how do we get more local involvement? But as men of color in these positions of authority, how do you create a wide net and ladder in order to make sure that there are others that are coming up behind you, right? So that is what I heard. and then, exposure for our African American students overall. What Mr. McBride talked about was actually, or not Mr. McBride, but what we talked about with Men of Vision. It's a program that I ran. It's also a program that we had at AOEC. It's also a program at CLC, which exposed and provided opportunities, and it wasn't related to behavior. It was just, are you a man, and do you want to be around other young men and men of color? So it was a great program. We had some great success. I'd love to see those things come back. And that Ms. Leguizamo's point was about how do we create opportunities for all men. What I will say is, while we often talk, and Superintendent said that it's an equity issue, I would agree in that this isn't a lack of inclusion. The issues that relate to men of color in leadership positions, it is unique. And to be able to provide a space for these individuals is important. And to have that national network is because there are a lot of times in which even today, we're the first. And so who do you go to for advice when you're the first? And so I support this initiative, but I don't want to miss what Ms. Hannah is saying. Specific to my employer, we started employee resource groups, which are opportunities for us to connect, right? For employees of faith, employees of color, pride, right? It allows you to connect with people and get some of those things, and so that may be something that we look at doing here in District 60. But if there are no other questions from the board or audience on this subject.
Can I just correct something I said? So it's the 1 million teachers of color from the Hunt Institute that I said earlier, and just some of the statistics that I don't believe that LeBaron gave. So men of color, 3% of them are leaving the workforce. Men of color are leaving the profession at a higher rate than their counterparts, and fewer men of color are choosing education as their career of choice. And that is why this is so important, that we support the men of color that we have in our district.
And that's why, and just also, Superintendent, I agree with what you said, but we also have to remember, right, that maybe a safety officer that you have, right, on staff, right, aspires to become an administrator.
Right.
And so with we having the Men of Color initiative, then they would be able to connect with the Men of Color chapter here. And so that's what I'm talking about.
And I think the way to look at it, I'm a black man, but I'm not a member of Alpha. And it doesn't mean I can't benefit from those opportunities that they provide, but I am not a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, right? So I understand the concept, I support it, but I do want to make sure that we understand what Ms. Hannah is saying as well. All right? So with that, I'm going to ask...
just one more thing.
Go ahead, Ms.
I'm
Wozniak.
sorry.
Ms. Johnson, I'll let you be the final, okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wozniak, I missed that.
Latinx, we're going to include Latinx.
Yes, it's men of color, Asian, any men of color.
Well, I just want to make sure it's not, we've got 4 black men. I just want to.
I didn't hear that.
She wanted to make sure that it was inclusive of all men of color.
Yes.
Yes, and that is something that Mr. Moulton and I discussed earlier. As I said, MSL, not any bias with Mr. Moulton, had a specific charge at the beginning, and it was African American men of color. They have now changed, and so we will be including all of our men of color in our leadership, not leadership principal, associate soup, and deputy positions that will be being coached with them.
Ms. Johnson. And microphone, please, if I can have somebody that stays on top of that.
So how is this 1 year that you pay this cost, or is this every year? What type of, is this a contract?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ms. Johnson. So the proposal is included, it has deliverables and a scope of work for up to 6 individuals to receive the coaching and the mentorship so that we can sustain our own chapter here in Waukegan. So Long term, the goal is, yes, we want other staff members to see themselves in what we're doing and provide those opportunities, whether it be networking opportunities, development opportunities, personal growth sessions, so that they can get the takeaways that we received. But for right now, it's set up into 4 categories for participation in the annual meeting, as well as individual one-on-one sessions and sessions as a group with the individuals here, the 4 to 6 individuals I mentioned earlier, to get direct input, feedback, and coaching from the national group.
But that's not answering my question. My question is this a pilot program? Is this a contract for a year?
Yeah.
This is a lot of money
Yeah.
that the district is putting out for men when we have many young men in the community, in the school district that could benefit from this.
Absolutely. So the goal for this would be that we receive this coaching and that we sustain it ourselves. So they're passing the baton to us to sustain, and the charge is going to be on us to sustain the chapter here in Waukegan after this initial scope of work.
So is this 1 year?
All the items on here.
Year you're going to pay this?
Yeah, all the items on here are one time right now.
One time year or one time for 10 years? Does that include 10 years, 5 years?
So we will clarify that when we ask the board for action, but what we're looking at here is a one-time initial for us to get through these coaching sessions and then allow us to be able to sustain ourselves without reverting back to this proposal.
So I think a better way is there, can you find out when it comes back for the board, would this be an annual cost? So
Sure.
even with Menovision, which was one of the things where we looked at, is the initial investment was, I believe, $75,000, right? And that was for the first year to allow for you to build the chapter, because it's going to be a much more intensive process. And so what Ms. Johnson is asking is, after this initial investment, is there a $5,000 annual renewal? Is it a $20,000 annual renewal?
we'll come
What
back
would
with
that annual renewal look like? Is that accurate, Ms. Johnson? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for the questions. Thank you for the information. I'm now going to move on to item 5A, which is, it looks like there's a presentation, the Crisis Intervention Safety Department Initiative Updates, and I saw Director Wilson in the hall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. Wilson, Director of Crisis Intervention and Safety, is here to talk about some initiatives within the Crisis and Safety Department. We are already at 7 p.m., so we're going to go through this relatively quickly and hit the high points, but please, if there are any questions as we get to the end of the presentation, I'd ask that you ask them. We also have some individuals here, Mr. Hall, one of our ESS's, Educational Safety Specialist, as well as Mr. Simon from Waukegan High School.
Good evening, board president, superintendent, and community. I'm excited about sharing with you this presentation of some of the initiatives and upgrades and enhancements to security that we're going to have in the years coming up here. Go to the next one. Staff trainings. The safety officers training received ALICE training. They received FERPA. Every safety officer that's on board it receives the FERPA training, basic safety officer training, bloodborne pathogens, bomb threat, as well as CPI, refresher and initiative. Last year, we had the opportunity to train the safety staff in CPR, as well as conflict resolution, verbal de-escalation techniques. Ms. Hannah, I'd love to do that for you. Safe School e-learnings and trauma-sensitive training that was given by the IFT. ALICE training. ALICE is a set of proactive strategies that increase the chances of survival during an active shooter event. This is one of the trainings that we've stressed, especially because of the news, Uvalde. So myself and Ms. London are certified ALICE trainers, and we're going to roll out training to the administrators this coming fall. We'll be doing that. The acronym for ALICE you'll see is Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. Safe Schools e-learning. This is a method that we deliver training to the safety staff through various online training. Every substitute safety officer goes through this training, and on the next page you'll see some of the topics that are offered. The library contains various topics. Some of the courses included in this are diversity awareness, active shooter, child abuse. Next page. We also have the FERPA, which deals with confidentiality and basic safety for the security staff. This year we had the opportunity to partner with the union, and they presented a 3-day course on student stress and trauma. Some of the administrative staff training we provided this year was National Incident Management System, NIMS. NIMS 100, which is Induction to Incident Command System, the NIMS 200, the NIMS 907, which is the active shooter. What can you do? And NIMS 100 helped the administration staff prepare for the incident command system. I put on here a site plan. Every building has a site plan. And in that site plan has the incident commander, the PIO, safety, liaison, logistics. So the structure is set out. So in the case of a crisis or an emergency, everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone's not scrambling around trying to figure what to do. Our drills this year, we completed all of our mandated drills. Take a look, fire drills, active shooter drills, a shelter in place. We did an ALICE drill with law enforcement, which are mandatory, and all of our buildings, all of our schools were able to complete those drills within the mandated time. Some of the security enhancements that we're looking for this year: new camera system installations, upgrades, building vulnerability assessments done by the ESSs and facilities engineer associates, door lock surveys, partnering with the Waukegan Police Department, and building site plans. This is an example of a building site plan that's kept in the crisis box in every building in the main office. You can see a little what it contains. Some of the additional security enhancements that we had this year, we created 2 after-hours entrances at the high school. Washington campus, door 28, door 15, at Brookside campus. And what these doors allowed us to do is to direct traffic to one entrance after hours so we can maintain security. We have an x-ray machine and a metal detector set up at both of those entrances so we know who's in the building. The safety officer schedules were realigned to address dismissal safety concerns. We hired substitute safety officers. Our goal this year is to have 10 at the beginning of the year. We signed an MOU with the union. Before we used to have to let go to safety officers, substitutes after 80 days. Now we've signed this MOU, and we're good through June 30th, 2023, which allows us to keep trained people for the year. Some of our future projects for consideration: Clark Elementary is getting 4 new cameras. Brookside is getting 6 additional new cameras and replacing existing cameras. Robbie Lightfoot is getting 4 new cameras. We did a walkthrough earlier this spring at Weiss Field to look at adding cameras there. The next page has the plan upgrades. As you can see, we're migrating all of our cameras over to a new system. They're getting new servers, which will give us ability to do some exciting new things. Vulnerability assessments. All the schools are required to do a vulnerability tactile assessment with their ESS and building administrator. All the buildings this year completed their assessments, their tactile assessments. We also brought in an independent contractor to do a vulnerability assessment. Paul Timms, a facilities engineer. He did an assessment at the Brookside campus, Washington campus, and the AOC campus. He also did an unannounced visitor, which was an attempt to get in our buildings.
What was the outcome? You did it, what was the outcome?
Because it relates to safety, Ms. Hannah, the suggestion is that if there is a vulnerable spot, we want to correct it and don't necessarily want to draw attention to those that
Yeah, I don't want to compromise our safety by telling exactly what happened. We should have the Board of Education should have a report. We are doing a report on the 30th. On the 30th.
It's not just the board here, but yes, that is an exception in closed session, Ms. Hannah, and any results from that will be reported to the board.
Yeah, we will share you them. The next page is a list of what we look for on the tactical vulnerable assessment that the ESSs walk around with their building administrators. Just some of the things that we look for in that one. Next is the Facilities Engineering Association. This is their report. This is the table of contents from the report and their findings and recommendations. Some of the things they looked at was deterrence, which included signs, lighting, landscaping, detection, duress communication, alarm systems, access control, video surveillance, delay, facility, classroom, offices, and gathering areas, and response. They provided us with recommendations. We have prioritized those recommendations. We're reviewing them for implementation this fall, prior to school. In conjunction with Facilities Engineering Association, Allegiant did door surveys at the Washington campus, Brookside campus, and AOC. The recommendations from these surveys, operations has given us a completion date of July 15 to implement all those recommendations or correct anything that needs to be repaired or damaged or replaced.
The door locks too?
Yes, ma'am. They included door locks and the doors.
See you, Ms. Vukovic.
The middle school and elementary school door lock and survey is to be completed the summer of 2022. So I'm going to bring them in the next couple of weeks, and they'll do surveys on all of the middle schools and all of the elementary schools. And we'll take those recommendations and have those implemented also by the beginning of the school year. Okay. Some of the other things that we're doing is working with the police department. We're currently reviewing our intergovernmental agreements. All patrol officers and their supervisors have been issued a proximity card. This will help decrease the time it takes to gain entry to buildings during school emergencies. We're going to have a gang awareness training with them. We do this every fall. Some of the additional drills we do, bus evacuation. Some of the future projects that we're looking forward to. Looking forward to recommending to the board to install cameras at all schools in the district. Exterior cameras, we'll start out with exterior cameras and then go from there. Halo, installed at AOC, Brookside, and middle school. Currently, Halo is installed at the Washington campus.
And again, this is just a clarification question. I know I said no questions, but when we say Halo, I don't know if the general public or even some board members may remember what that is. So
Yeah,
can you
I'll get to that,
okay,
Board
thank you.
President. Some other ongoing safety initiatives. Our district mental health response team, which is headed up by Ms. London, who's our crisis intervention and coordinator. Gaggle, which is our email system, monitoring system. What Gaggle does is it picks out keywords. Example would be suicide or KMS. It sends those messages directly to designated administrators. And we get those so we can look at them, take a look at them. We also have our anonymous tip line.
Is that being used?
Several administrators at different buildings.
Talking about for kids.
For the kids?
Are the kids using the anonymous tip line?
I'm sorry, can you?
Are the students using the anonymous tip line?
This is for anyone, students, staff.
I know they.
So after the presentation, what Ms. Hannah is asking is for a usage report, Mr. Wilson.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Our district mental health response team, some of the services it provides: support to Waukegan students, parents, staff, and stakeholders affected by crisis situations. Next page. It's further explanation of Gaggle. Anonymous tip line. Here's the number. One of the things that we did this year, which was really exciting for me, because we partnered with Junior ROTC to put together emergency go kits. So we had the kids come in, and in that diagram you can see them putting together the bags. To the right, you'll see some of the bags that they completed. So we prepared enough bags to make sure that every classroom, every house a student has emergency go kits and supplies in the event of a crisis. Halo. I'm going to have Mr. Simon come up, help me with this. Halo is a smart sensor, and what it detects is vaping. It allows us to detect vaping in the restrooms. Currently, we have them installed in every restroom at the Washington campus. So if a kid is vaping, you'll get an alert via email, or kid or adult, doesn't matter. If someone's vaping in there, you'll get an alert by email or text. If someone sprays cologne to try to mask it, you'll get a signal saying masking. Okay. Halo allows you to set verbal alarms. So you can set if they detect a vacancy. Right now I think it's set for emergency, and it's an audible alarm. So the staff can hear it and respond to it.
You only got it at Washington campus?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It was a pilot program so we could get it rolled out, work out the bugs, and see if it was viable and sustainable for the district.
And now it's going in Brookside.
That is the intention, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So you can talk about that.
So, the nice thing about the Halo system is that it allows us not only to get the alerts when things are happening, but it also allows us to see our trend data. So we're able to see what locations are where events are happening and the frequency, the certain times, and then we were actually able, as a staff, to modify what we were doing to address this. Vaping is going to be something that district, community, societally, we're going to be dealing with for a while. However, before the Halo system, we were quite blind to what was happening. The system opened our eyes to what's happening. The one thing I'll say with the reports is when you look into some of the numbers, you might say that's a lot of events. We do have multiple sensors in the bathroom. So if a student was using a vape in the washroom, it could get picked up by multiple of the sensors, so sometimes some of the numbers are duplicated. Also, when most students vape, they aren't just using it once, they're using it more than once, and then that might be just one instance of one student using a vape. However, it would set off the alert multiple times to us. It's really allowed our safety staff, our culture and climate, and our administration to target where and when this is happening and to really reduce it. Our goal is to assist these students, to provide them the appropriate interventions. It's not just discipline. All of our students who we have with vaping materials, we refer to the Lake County Health Department, who partners with us for drug counseling. And it's an ongoing issue, but with this system we can continue and grow and make things better.
I would just suggest the topic that you're on now.
Microphone, and then can you hold the question to Mr. McBride, because I made everybody else, please.
Okay. Go ahead.
If we go, is that the end of the presentation, or we still have more? All right.
I would also like to point out that with the Halo system, not only does it detect vaping, but it also helps us to, if there's a fight in the bathroom, it'll detect an aggression value. So it'll let us know that, it's an extra set of eyes to where, it handles the problem to where, we can't necessarily have a safety officer in the bathroom. So this is our eyes and ears, and it helps us direct our resources to where we need to be at.
So the last chart shows you the green is when kids were out of school. They came back to school. It was off for a break, and then that one, yeah, the event trending. So I guess they forgot about the vape detectors were there, so they showed up, and as you can see, steadily went down. As the vape detectors did what they were supposed to do, the safety staff was able to react, and the vaping events went down. Questions for me?
So Ms. Hannah had the first question.
And I certainly hope.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah, but
No, that's
microphone,
okay.
please.
The fact that I'm surprised that this was piloted at Washington campus. I would have thought with the challenges that we had at Brookside that it would have been piloted there. And so hopefully, if this system has proven effective with lessening the violations of smoking devices, and that sort of thing on school property, it needs to be over at Brookside campus. Because, see, it is against the law that students have any of those things in school. And I certainly hope that we remember that, don't forget that it's against state law.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we need to really make our students understand that just because they've been getting away with it at the high schools, that you're violating a state law by having lighters, vapes, tobacco, whatever in the schools. They need to understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
So the takeaway is a communication plan about these, and I would hope and expect, and I believe that it is, but we can confirm, Ms. Polk, that we have it budgeted in next year to expand this program. You did come before and the board approved the pilot at the Washington campus,
Yes.
and now what Ms. Hannah is saying, we want to see it expanded, and if we're not, I would suggest that we look at it at middle school as well, as I know that it is starting earlier and earlier, and so that is the takeaway. I heard you, Ms. Wozniak, but I did see Mr. Shinkton,
Well,
and then
Jeff
I
wants-
had Mr. Shinkton, I had Ms. Vukovic, and then Jeff, and then you, Mr. Shinkton.
So,
I think it's on.
so my question or comment is somewhat in regards to this, but actually also to the next part on the agenda. And I've had this conversation a little bit already, but these safety walkthroughs, do they, I'll just throw this out there, are they done, say, during the end of a year when there's no one in the school, versus being done actually during the day when we have students and behaviors in the schools are different? I know and as far as these Halo devices, you know, honestly, they probably should be in every middle school. This is nothing new. This has been going on for years. Honestly, so, you know, you can take it a couple of different ways. I'm sure the students aren't smoking Tutti Frutti. There's probably different liquids, but I would be more concerned about the enhanced or the real things that are being smoked inside the school versus, you know, the vaping. But when we get to the next section, I'll cover some of that too.
Can someone run the microphone to Ms. Vukovic, please?
I like smoking.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, two things. I know I read in the paper after the Uvalde shooting, and they had done some sort of a interview with Lake County people, or Lake County educators, and it said that we were in compliance with the doors being, because the Channel 2 did that article, and that's not the case. I think that everybody probably already knows that if you talk to any teacher, because not every building, my classroom door did not lock from the inside. I had to go in the hall to lock it. So hopefully, if that's what you're going to do this summer is check all that, that's great, but I don't know who made the statement that it was we were in compliance when we weren't, because my whole wing was not. Now I know they're redoing the whole, where I was, they're redoing all the rooms, so I assume they're going to put new doors on there that have the correct locks. The other question is, when we had a live practice session with the police department for the active shooter drill, and one of the last thing they've added on in more recent years with the training is the E for escape. Instead of hiding in the closet, you know, if you can escape, go ahead. And I remember one we had where they announced over the intercom, the shooter is at door 7, let's say. And none of us in our building knew where door 7 was, so we didn't know whether to escape or not. Probably the principals maybe need to say at the beginning of the year, or give all the teachers a map of which door, because the numbers are not on the inside of the building, they're on the outside. So if you don't notice where your door is, because I mean, I was right at the top of the stairs, so I was door 8, I think, and I could just go out, but I didn't know what my door number was at that time. So it might be something for the new teacher week to have the principals put a little map and just show them what door they're closest to. So if there is an active shooter, because I don't know that, I mean, obviously the shooter's not going to come on the intercom and tell us that was during a drill, but teachers will text each other, I heard noise over here. You know, there can be ways for people to try to gauge where the shooter is, and if the teachers don't know where the door numbers are or what they are, that could really hinder and have something like what happened in Texas. So that's all.
Good point, Ms. Vukovic, as well as, you know, sometimes there are just the "you are here" signs that are up on the wall where you know in the building where you are. But if we want to respond to the door lock question.
To answer your question about the numbers on the doors, we had until the 15th of this month, and we put in requests for all numbers to be on the inside of the doors to correlate with the outside of the doors in big bold numbers so that everybody can see them and not just on the wall. So that request is being completed as we speak.
The locks was the first question related to us being in compliance. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So thank you for the question, and I know there's been a few things mentioned in conjunction with this. Some individuals might have seen the report on CBS. After we saw that report, Mr. Wilson met with the operations team immediately to double check all the classroom door locks within the district. And what we found was an item that we would call a classroom function. And we did talk with one of our consultants about this as well, because we want to make sure that our information is, or our equipment is operating appropriately. So the classroom function of a door would be, there may be a lock on the hallway side, but as soon as students are in the classroom, we should shut the door and it should automatically lock from the classroom side. Not specifically lock from inside the classroom, because we don't want to restrict egress in case of an emergency in the classroom. So if there's a fire in the classroom, emergency situation, individuals should be able to get out without needing a key. If there are students in the classroom, if a teacher or a paraprofessional in the classroom is incapacitated, they need to be able to get out without needing additional devices. However, from the hallway side, that door should remain locked when it's shut. So you go into your classroom, you put a key in, turn it one way, you unlock it to get in, and when you take the key out, it should default to lock. Now, you can override that, and you can also do other things outside of leaving the door open to override that system. But part of these recommendations in reviewing these doors is to ensure that, yes, they all work as they're supposed to, but also ensure the training supports that. And we've been in discussions with Mr. Wilson, Mr. Kruckelberg, the high school leadership at this time to ensure that that training, not just at the high school, but district-wide, is done, so everybody knows when you go into your classroom, you shut the door, it should default to lock. Let's not do anything to override that, because if there's an emergency situation, people panic regardless of how much training you have. We don't want people to panic and stress out and forget to pull out a key, shut the door, lock it. We want that to already be done. So we're continuously discussing that, but that's the functionality that we believe we have based on the inspection of our district locksmiths. We're confirming that with outside agencies, and they are planning. Mr. Wilson mentioned a July 15th date, planning to have any discrepancies completed by July 15th. That door survey was not just the classroom doors, correct? That was also hallway doors, exterior doors. If you looked at the situation in Texas, the individual went in from the parking lot, went into a classroom. So it's not just classroom doors, but that certainly is something we're looking at, as we're looking at all the doors as a whole throughout the district.
I think from a teacher's point of view, though,
And I'm sorry,
you
Ms.
have the door locked. I can talk to her. I'll leave my teacher.
Go ahead, Ms.
Can you hear?
That
Okay.
when you're
Oh, I'm sorry, they can't hear you on online.
I know.
there's a lot of services that come in and out of your room to take someone for social work or someone, that gets to be a problem because we teach the kids, don't open the door.
Right.
But then if you're in the middle of teaching, and I'd say 5 or 6 times during one day in my classroom, another adult was coming in to take a child out or come in and push in, and that creates a whole nother piece for the teacher that every time she's got to stop teaching. You've got that many interruptions. So that's why I think it'd be better if it could lock from the inside. I understand the fire thing.
Yeah.
But if there's some way where there's a deadbolt on the inside or something where the teacher could push it when she needs to without going in the hall to lock it. But that creates a lot of disruption to the instruction if every time someone comes to your door, you have to go stop to what you're doing and go open the door for them.
Sure.
I would just ask. staff maybe for their input on that.
Yeah, no, thank you for the comments, and I'm actually glad you mentioned that because without divulging all the details of our safety plan and assessment, I will mention one thing specifically to what you just mentioned. So there was a door specifically in the report that had a slide deadbolt on the door that was above the handle. It was probably about 5 foot off the ground. So it could be manually locked from the inside or the hallway side. And somebody could easily leave the door handle unlocked and lock that deadbolt. It's easier based on what you're saying, but that is a violation of code. So we're trying to correct some of those issues. We want to be safe, but we also understand there's day-to-day operations that, you know, it's tedious. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're in compliance with all of our doors and hardware. We want to make sure the staff are trained so they know what to do on a regular routine basis, not just when an emergency occurs. And we're evaluating that. Again, we've already talked to the high school leadership team. We're going to continue on with this with our area superintendents and trickle that down to our principals and assistant principals. But this, based on the presentation, is a very large scope of work that Mr. Wilson is undertaking and reviewing, and everything in stages with an ultimate target of having these items addressed before the start of school.
So,
Thank you.
I have Mr. McBride and Ms. Wozniak. Okay, so Ms. Wozniak, but what I do want to say is two things. And I wanted to curse, but I'm not going to do it. It's a darn shame that this is what we have to do and spend time discussing in our society. It's because exactly what Ms. Vukovic is stating is why they said we were in compliance is because the doors operate. But we also understand the logistics of a teacher in a classroom. And so if you override it, there's no option to lock it from the inside. What he says, the doors will lock, so they're in compliance. And again, we're having this conversation because we have to worry about people coming into our buildings and hurting our babies. So I want to say that it's sad. I hear exactly what Ms. Vukovic just said, but it wasn't a misstatement. It's because when we have been in compliance, but we're not going to lie, is there are ways that you can override what is an imperfect system. Is if I turn the key the other way, door will be unlocked. And there are many reasons. Me and the superintendent do walkthroughs. Sometimes we knock on the door and you have to wait for someone to come and open it. Other times you pull on that door and the door will open right away. And so that is a reality. It comes down to training. We shouldn't have to do it, but this is the world that we live in. Ms. Wozniak.
I'm intrigued by the data on the Halo stuff. Could you bring those slides back up? What weeks are those? Is that 1 week data, or is that over a 5-month period?
April 3rd through June 4th.
After spring break, roughly to the end of the year. Is that right, Mr. Wilson?
Yeah.
April to June. So, go back to the other one. No, not the 16 on Sunday. Is that like a false thing going on? What's that?
So these sensors are always live, and we have individuals in our buildings all the time. So sometimes these are extracurricular events. I will tell you, when we have sporting events at the school, we've had things after school, and there have been times where I've had the capacity to look at the cameras, and it's not just our students who are going in. We weren't necessarily there to respond, but you can see that it was also community members going in. And you can see that the alarm went off, and they were the only individual. We can look at the cameras and say they were the only individual within that washroom at that time.
Okay, and then I see that it's washroom, cafeteria 1 boys and cafeteria 2 boys are like...
That is 2 sensors within the washroom. So as I said earlier, there's multiple sensors within the washroom. So some of those duplicates that you see, when we get into the actual data and looking at the exact timestamps, we can correlate that and say a lot of the times it's the sensor picking up one event happening.
So you're saying they're overlapping, okay?
Yes.
But there's also 3 times more occurrences versus any of their other washrooms. So what are we doing to curtail what's going on in boys' cafeteria?
So when we started noticing this, we increased our culture and climate. We actually assigned a culture and climate who was at the cafeteria at all times, so they were able to quickly respond. Depending on the gender of the culture and climate staff, we needed to then have a safety individual. If it was a female washroom, going into the female, or vice versa, at the time, depending on who the culture and climate was, and then we were able to quickly respond. So it was our highest use. That's also a washroom that, if you've been to the Washington campus, there aren't any doors to that washroom. It just, students walk. There's a barrier, but you sort of walk around it, and it's an open room to get into, and it's also available all throughout the day. So students are able to use it throughout the day, and our cafeteria time is our least structured time during the day as well.
Okay. So what are we doing in the future to?
That's what they did, right? So
Yeah.
when they saw the data, they responded to the data.
But I can't see. Did it decrease after that?
It did decrease, and I will say this is not perfect. This system will not solve all of our problems. However, this system allows us to start to address the issue. Without it, our eyes were really blind. We could, unless we caught a student in the act of using any sort of smoking device, we weren't able to it because the vape dissipates. We weren't really able to do that, and the bathrooms have privacy. Now we are able to do that. We also increased our measurements at the doors, right? Our searching. Again, we won't divulge everything that we're doing, but we had a heightened and randomness of things to try to prevent the items from coming in the building. Unfortunately, these devices are primarily plastic, and they're able to get through, unfortunately, our metal detectors at times.
Perfect. So, Mr. Shington, then I have one. Oh, I saw you. Ms. Lexama, was that a question?
Oh, yeah.
You had one? So I saw your hand first. What I am going to ask is, we did start late, so it's not anybody's fault. We still have an extensive agenda, but it is 7:46. So go ahead, Ms. Lexama.
So I'll ask the question from the community member first, and as we know, Waukegan occasionally has bad air quality. Does the Halo system get messed up or quirky with our bad air quality whenever that acts up?
So actually the devices, they don't just measure vapes, they measure a lot of things. They have microphones, but one of the things that they can measure is the air quality, and we've worked with our operations department because we've noticed that some of the sensors were saying that we had a high amount of CO2, and we've contacted the operations department. It's not necessarily that an alarm is going off, but we're getting the alerts, and then we've contacted our operations department to then look at those things. So we're able to, actually these devices, despite the airflow, are able to tell us if we're having issues.
Thank you for that. And so getting into my questions here. So I like that you guys are also having data, and this is good district data as well, because as we're talking about wraparound services, Superintendent, this is also data that we can use to identify areas for targeted services, right? And it looks like, according to this data, our males in high school are needing some type of interventions, right? But I'd like to also understand, because you talked about that they're showing a decrease after you had put in some type of interventions. Now, is it because you're seeing a decrease in usage, or is it because they're probably locating to a different spot in the school? And I know that these halos are only in particular areas in schools and not throughout the entire school. So is it visible for our students to understand that and then try to trick the system?
So our incidence of students using vapes throughout the school, not in the washrooms, are very low. It's quite obvious because we have people everywhere, especially with the high school. There aren't really places to hide. We can see it on the camera. You can see the vapor coming out. There were a few students bold enough to use devices in classrooms this year, and of course we addressed those. As far as the interventions that we did, as you can see, things did go down. We partnered with NACASA actually to do increased education there, and with this we were able to put a dent into it. I won't say to the community or to the board that everything is perfect, that this will stop it. However, it will allow us to put an initial address to it. And we did, in talking with students anecdotally, they will say, you know what, I'm not going to do that because I know there's a consequence. Where before they were able to go into the washroom and Most times I have not. There wasn't a consequence because we didn't know about it. And just as the other things that Mr. Wilson talked about, we need to be aware of what we're doing so then we can improve and change for the better.
Right. Thank you for that. And just really going into the vulnerability assessments, I know I've been talking a lot with Mr. Moulton in regards to these assessments and having it on a frequent basis. So you mentioned a few vulnerability assessments have already been done on some buildings in the presentation. Can you confirm if all of our buildings are have already done the vulnerability assessments, or that still needs to be done?
So all of our buildings have been done with the ESS and the building administration. We brought facilities engineering in to do an independent assessment, and that was done at AOC, Washington campus, and the Brookside campus. There's plan to follow on as soon as school start. To answer Mr. Shankson's question, we do the vulnerability assessments during the school year when their students are active, so they can assess everything.
And how frequent are you guys scheduled to do these vulnerability assessments? Is there a frequency?
The ESS one is done yearly, and we're going to take the recommendations from this assessment once we have the middle schools and elementary schools done, and then we'll make an assessment with the administration. We'll take and see how often we need it.
Okay, and that's fine. But also going into a little bit into Ms. Vukovic's conversation, bringing in the vulnerability assessment. Do all of our classrooms have maps of the school buildings and evacuation maps? I know I've seen it in the hallways, but do the classrooms inside them themselves have it?
Every district device has Crisis Go on there, and in Crisis Go, there's maps of every building. And so most of our teachers have gone with Crisis Go, and we have the maps. They have the ability to look at the map on there.
On an device?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait a minute. Children don't have devices.
Sure.
And so I'm with Ms. Leguizamo. There needs to be something physical shown.
Sure. So, yes, the devices are on Crisis Go, and we're going to look to expand the devices that receive it. But if you look at the door, the exit door over here, you have the fire exit, the shelter area, and the highlighted map of this floor of the building in the case of an emergency. Because students don't have it on their phones, and in the case of a crisis, you may not look at your phone unless you're getting an alert for some reason. This is what you've historically seen in the buildings, and this is something that we're going to look to go back to in each room. And for those of you in the room, hopefully you can see it. There's a perfect example right there on the door.
Right.
So just to be sure then, at the beginning of next school year, we are going to be seeing maps in every single classroom that has the door numbers on there and identifies for them. Because, although you're going to put door numbers on the outside, right? I may work on the west wing and don't know much about the east wing, right? I may be new to the district and just want to, I'm looking at this from a vulnerability assessment, right? This is where my concern is at. And I've always been talking about outside threats to our school district. So this is where I'm looking at in regards to maps.
That was one of the recommendations that came through the assessment, that we have maps installed in every room, and it's one of the things that we're going to address.
Okay, and then the last question that I'll just put on here, it's actually two pieces, and that's in regards to equipment of a sort, right? And two pieces of equipment. One is for your safety officers. Are you guys having conversation about going into like earpieces for instead of walkie-talkies? Because I feel like if you guys are still using the walkie-talkies, anybody that's around in the vicinity also has access to that information that's being conveyed through the walkie-talkies. So just looking for like an internal system. Are you guys looking into that?
Currently, every ESS has issued earphones to the staff. If a staff doesn't have earpiece, they should let their ESS know, and we'll get them one. But everyone should be wearing an earpiece in the building.
100% of the time, right? Even
They should,
for
yes.
activities and stuff. Okay.
Yes, they should be wearing one. I'll discuss with the ESSs to do a survey of who needs a earpiece, and we'll get it done.
Okay.
And we do this several times a year.
Okay, and then the last second piece of equipment that I was concerned about in regards to the vulnerability assessment. which they talked about having classroom communication boxes. Right, there's a box that I've seen in some schools where you could either hit a switch that says, you are on lockdown, everyone in your classroom is safe of a sort, or whatever type of communication that goes to some sort of main hub that is, housing all of that information. So do we have, or have you been having conversations about having classroom equipment that shows, that the classroom is safe, the classroom is locked, whatever, in regards to the vulnerability assessments?
We haven't had those conversations yet, but I do believe that's one of the things on the assessment to look into, and we will be reviewing that.
Okay.
And just to recall, the board did, we didn't vote it down, but we were hesitant to install a light on the outside of the school building that Dr. Lopez suggested about 3 years ago, that was the intent, is that you can alert the community when things are going on and change the status through a verbal warning. There's a lot of conversations from Dr. Lopez around this, so I don't want people to think that it hasn't been happening all these years, but Mr. Wilson has taken it to another level, and we appreciate that. And the board has to understand that sometimes these suggestions come up, they got a cost.
Yep.
And so we take all of that into account.
But I also know that we did approve the blue light at a point, because I've been asking about it, but the installation never went through.
Yeah, we discussed it. We didn't approve it. It didn't come forward.
I have a date. I'll look back in my emails. I can do a search for the word blue, because there's not much, but
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Board President, I know we have an extensive agenda yet. I just have one final question. It's the only question I'm going to ask, and that is regarding THC. When I've talked to students, they tell me that they know the kids are bringing in THC in these vaping, yet I look on the chart here and I see it's flat. Doesn't show any THC or very little. Are we able to pick up THC in the bathrooms when they vape that?
Yes, we can. That's one of the things it does look for.
How come it's looking flat though? It looks looking like it's zero or pretty much all across.
So, Mr. Riddle, there are instances of students vaping with THC products. However, a lot of these students are purchasing things that they do not know what they're actually putting in their body, which is even more concerning. However, we were very surprised when we saw that, and we actually sent some of those devices back to make sure for testing, and it is the vast majority of our students are vaping products that don't have THC in them.
Okay.
So it does pick up, and it does actually tell us a difference if a student is vaping a product that has THC or not. However, the vast majority of what students are vaping that they think contains THC actually does not.
Does not. That's good. Okay, thank you.
And that's just at Washington campus.
Right.
So you can't, it's inconclusive for, to make that broad statement about that's all that they're smoking, because we haven't assessed at Brookside campus.
Right. And we're working with these students so that we don't have continuously repeating individuals over and over and over again. We're getting them help.
Correct.
To get them off that. That's important. Thank you.
Yeah, and so very briefly, the only thing that I wanted to mention is in relationship, kind of what I was saying with Ms. Vukovic, is how we have practices and procedures, but they don't sometimes align, is substitutes. So one of the things when you talk about a door being unlocked relates to substitute teachers. So we have to solve that problem because they're not issued a classroom key. And so on some of those doors. So let's just be mindful is that sometimes why there's a reason for it, and if we can solve that problem, what you guys are working on doing, we'll solve it. So thank you, Director Wilson. We appreciate the presentation and all that you and your team is doing to keep our kids safe.
Thank you.
Next up, safety. Next up is our safety and security consulting services proposal. These next items we're going to go through. I know Mr. Shinkton had a question about this one. There were attachments, are attachments. All of it is there online. For the sake of time, I'll call them out. If there's a question from either a board member or community member or comment, they can make it or ask it when we get to that item. So 5B is the safety and security consulting proposal. All the items are there attached. It is from R.J. Harrison Associates. And the details are there. Mr. Shinkton, I know you had a question.
Just
He's right behind you. We got you.
Just as a quick question, I mean, I didn't read his proposal completely thoroughly, but it seemed like we were looking to pay somebody to do another outside assessment, basically of what we're already doing. Kind of seems just a little bit redundant.
So can you elaborate as to why this would be different, Deputy Moulton?
Yeah, I can. So there are some differences here, and this is a draft proposal. But one thing specifically that we hear about every year are traffic patterns, arrival and dismissal at the schools, as well as our crossing guard training and support. So that's something that's one of the top priorities of this. Also within the proposal is administrative coaching for the leadership within the Crisis and Safety Department. And one item that is also here, but it is not explicit, and I believe it should be a little more explicit in the proposal, is the procedure and policy review. So we have several policies associated with this department. The last time we did a full comprehensive review was in 2018, if the board recalls. That was at the same time we entered into our current intergovernmental agreement with the Waukegan Police Department, which would also be within this scope of work, so support in that area.
And the benefit to Mr. Harris is that he is also working with the police department, so it aligns in that we're using the same individual who's working with those things. Ms. Hannah?
Okay, I kind of have, this is an RFP, right? A request for proposal, right?
This is a proposal, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, were there any other proposals? Because, you know, I'm wondering, you know, you all are, we just approved R.J. Harris to come and to assess our HR and our salary structures in the district, and now he's coming again and he's submitting a proposal to, as Mr. Shinkton said, duplicate something that you guys are already doing, or that is already being done. So my question, where are the, before we are asked to approve this, I want to see credentials, okay, from R.J. Harris that gives him the qualifications to do this, okay? Because you put in a whole lot of duties in this for this proposal, okay, for our safety training, and we were getting all of our safety trainings at a very minimal cost through our relationship with our police department as well as other places, okay? And now we're getting ready to pay up to $75,000 for someone to come in and to consult with our safety department, and this guy got another contract with us. I mean, how are we doing that? How are we duplicating the money flow? I mean, it means that he's going to be he's going to be getting double paid from the school district. But I want to know where the other proposals, along with his, that were submitted, or was his the only one?
I can help with this question. So first of all, I want to say this is not a duplication of payments. The first one is a salary assessment, and he does work in HR, and I can't remember the associate.
And that contract is with Morgan HR.
Thank you.
Okay,
with
but
Logan
he
HR.
still works for them.
No, he has his own company, Miss Hannah.
No, I know that. I know Rick Harris personally. He was standing right there with the lady, and his name is on that that R.H. Morgan or Morgan contract that was approved for him to assess the staff and the district salaries. That's one. And now he is getting ready to get another one. And I want to see credentials.
We can get you the credentials.
I want to
but
see credentials.
I just want to explain the thinking. I reached out to Mr. Harris and our ex-chief Wallace to come in and to assist us with our safety and security processes prior to, I believe, the arrest and Uvalde that we had at our high school, and Uvalde, the shooting at our high school. So I've been in talks with our ex-chief of Waukegan PD, along with Rick Harris, who works for the city of Waukegan. Their police department has assisted in North Chicago with their police department. So in reality, there will be executive coaching that will take place for this, but it will be our chief, shall I say the ex-chief, our retired chief, that's a better way to state, that will work with our school system to ensure that we're in alignment with Waukegan PD, to look at our policies, to look at our traffic flow, to assist with our safety and security. And for me, who's better, what a better person than our retired chief who has been in Waukegan, with Waukegan PD for many years, is an alumni of Waukegan, and I believe a resident. I'm not sure. I don't know currently, but I believe he used to live in Waukegan. I'm not sure on that point. So we are contracting. We are asking the board to contract with R.J. Harris, which the chief would work under R.J. Harris and that umbrella.
Is that in the proposal? Because that doesn't say that.
So on pages 9 through 14, we have individuals with their experience and expertise listed. And I believe that information is reflected on page 10.
Yeah, I'm thinking, this is kind of like pay to play kind of stuff.
And we shouldn't say that out loud.
I'm saying it.
That's fine, Miss Hannah, but that's very disrespectful.
No, it's not disrespectful, and don't say that.
It is. It's disrespectful.
It's not disrespectful.
It's disrespectful. Pay to play is disrespectful. That is saying that someone is taking money in order to either mislead or not provide services, and there have been no complaints against Mr. Harris and the service that he's provided for the city. He's not paying anybody else on this board for these services.
You're elaborating on something, Mr. President, that you may not be fully aware of. So,
and I won't. And if anybody is alleging that it be pay to play, I would advise you to please reach out to our legal counsel and file a formal complaint. But saying that in public about an individual who has a reputation that Mr. Harris had is very...
I did not say any. I did not speak anybody's name.
Okay. All right.
You
moving
didn't hear
on.
me say anybody's
You're right.
name.
Yep, you're right, Miss Hannah. Moving on.
So, Mr. Ewing, it is our intention that we come back with recommendations as we have in the past and even with the previous agenda item, so it's very clear and transparent what we're getting with the scope of work.
Thank you. Item 5C, Continual Resolution Authority for fiscal year 2022-2023. Information is there and presented for the public as well as the board. Very common practice. We've done it every year. Next item, 5D, Material Surcharges, increase to purchase furniture for Glenwood Elementary School. The items are listed there. Item E, FY23 formal purchases for paper, computer supplies, standard supplies, and custodial supplies. That information is presented. Are there any questions? F, approval of facility fee waiver for a City of Waukegan pageant 2022.
What kind of paper?
The request and information for the fee waiver is listed. The date. Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Just wanted to comment that I was glad to see that we were able to find some accommodations for this organization. That's all.
Thank you.
And I want to go back to E. With the supplies,
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
yeah, I spoke with the superintendent earlier today regarding the request that, that the student from the high school brought to us regarding feminine personal products. And I am requesting, and I hope with the concurrence of the board, that we can purchase those products with some of our ESSER money to go into the middle schools and the high schools to make sure that our young ladies are taken care of at the times when they're when it's needed.
And that would be item L, right?
No.
Yes, that would be item L, but I will say, Ms. Hannah, we are required to provide those products,
Yes.
middle school, high school, etc. So that is addressed in item L. We did do a walk through the school with that student 2 days after the board meeting.
Okay.
There's information attached to that agenda item with a follow-up 1 to 2 weeks before school starts, but certainly take that in advisement because that is something we're required to provide,
Right.
and we should be checking it just like we check paper towel and toilet paper.
Absolutely.
All right. So we are at G, approval of facility rental waiver request for Urban Edge Entertainment Thanksgiving Turkey Tournament. That information is there and it is listed. Are there questions? No. H, approval of facility fee waiver for Waukegan Band Foundation. No questions. Creation of communications and engagement manager at Waukegan High School.
Is that,
My only question related to that is, and forgive me if it was in there, I looked at the job description, but I didn't see the chain of command. Would this individual report to you, Mr. Alajakis, or would they report directly to the principal?
Why wouldn't they report to
It said that in
Ms.
there.
Fulton?
For a communications?
Well, it has post-secondary and college career readiness.
So if Ms. Fulton has information for students, instead of having to wait for Nick, that would be given to this individual, so it'll shut, and again, Mr. Alajakis, you explain.
Absolutely. So, good evening, Board of Education Superintendent. This individual would be reporting directly to the school staff. We wanted to be able to allow them to report to the school staff so that the principals at the building could then dictate kind of how they're used. Now, the communications department here at Central Office, the family and community engagement department here at Central Office would work on training. It would work to help with reviews, to assist this individual as they get started in every step of the way. But ultimately, they report to the building principal, similar to, say, Mr. Moten gave me this great example, a custodian in a building. Ultimately reports to the building principal. However, a lot of their training and information they receive will come from the operations department.
Thank you, Ms. Alajakis. Are there any other questions on this item? Item J, attendance at the 2022 ASBO Conference and Expo.
Congrats to our two members that will be presenting at this one.
K, update on HVAC mechanical improvement projects. Those items are there. Johnson Controls has been a great partner this year.
Have a representative in the audience.
We have an individual from Johnson Controls. Well, thank you. Appreciate you coming and sitting through the meeting. It's always good news when we're not throwing questions at you, right? It means things are happening and working well, so we appreciate it. L, Waukegan High School restroom follow-up. If you can speak to it very briefly, Deputy Moten, so it addresses Ms. Hannah's concern as well as others from the community.
Yes, so we did do a walkthrough on May 26th with the student, myself, Mr. Kruckerberg, and Ms. Dada, custodial manager. And we did note some items that needed to be corrected. There were some items that had already been corrected from the time the student reported it, but the The feminine products was something that was consistent in all the restrooms, so that's something definitely the student was correct in. And again, that's something that we are required to supply free of charge. We have a lot of old dispensers in our restroom that have the 25-cent sticker. What we did when this became law is we took out the mechanism that took the money and we just made it free dispensary. But we want to make sure that that is being enforced. So just like when our evening staff, our custodial staff checks, they do their checks, that needs to be checked and replenished. And also during the day needs to be replenished. We took a look at some additional items such as damaged dispensers, paper towel, soap dispensers. There were some the student reported was not in some of the restrooms, particularly by the cafeteria. All of those items are set to be replaced. We do have a target completion for a majority of the items by mid-July. We did commit to the student based on our checklist of items to rewalk the space with her 1 to 2 weeks prior to the start of school. We attached to this agenda item some specifics, and immediately after the walkthrough, our custodial management team sent a notice to all custodians throughout the district, because even though we walked through the high school, this could be happening at other schools, right? We just don't have it being brought to our attention. Reinforce the expectations on what they're supposed to be checking on a regular basis, and if there are issues or discrepancies, how to report it and when, so that we can stay on top of this and not behind. One item specifically that was noted, and I encouraged the staff that while we were there, some of the broken bathroom partitions in the restroom. They get broken from time to time for various reasons. We have to stay on top of that with our inventory and replace them as soon as possible. We also had some reports of damaged mirrors that we're proposing be replaced with polished stainless steel mirrors to minimize replacement and vandalism if they're tampered with. So that's something that the school is assessing now, because there are some restrooms without mirrors. There are some where they're damaged. There are some where they're very small, and you can see they've been replaced already, probably with something that is not fully appropriate. So again, we did that walkthrough. We're assessing, we're replacing, we're updating. The operations team is up to the task, and we will circle back with the student before the start of school.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Thank you for that quick overview, Mr. Moten. So I have two concerns. First product is a feminine product, right? Just to be sure, we're also putting that in the gentlemen's bathrooms as well.
So currently we have the dispensers in the female. So we did have that conversation with the legal counsel, because when this became law, it was restrooms, locker rooms for females, and then emergency supply in the nurse's office. But as we're considering, gender neutrality, we want to make sure we're in compliant and maybe even be ahead of the game. So that's something that recently came up as part of this with our legal counsel. We're assessing, and we'll do what we need to do to make sure that we're compliant if that's a concern.
Right, and usually when women use those products from the vending machine, they are probably the worst, daintiest products that you could probably use in an emergency situation. Can you maybe just give me a sample of what it is that you guys put in those? And I'm looking for quality products in regards to hygiene, feminine products, and I don't know what anyone else wants to talk about here on the board, but I think that in case of those emergency purposes, they shouldn't be the worst or the lowest, product. It should be a good quality product, and it's a very sensitive conversation.
So is this something, Ms. Hannah, that between finance and the wellness committee that you all can discuss a little bit further? Because before, remember, the nurses used to handle it, so we always offer them in districts.
I don't know what you think, Mr. Riddle. I mean, I think it's being done right now.
I think it is. We're not meeting in the summer, so
right.
This
So
be done before then.
Right, and it needs to be so. I mean, it could come up at a future meeting, but I'm hearing Ms. Leguizamo talk about now, and that's what I'm talking about, is when school resumes, that we have these things in place for the students. And one thing you talked about, the quality and low grade, gotcha, right? But then we also have to remember that these things are usually for emergencies.
Right, that's why I'm saying.
And
And it needs to be quality products in case of emergencies, right?
Yeah.
Especially in case of emergencies.
And could you?
Do you know what the brand name is?
And listen, I see you're talking only about the high school. We need to also be having the same conversation about our middle schools.
Right.
And you mentioned that,
And
right,
elementary.
Deputy Moulton?
Yeah, this notice went out to all schools after we did the walkthrough at the high school.
Okay.
So that's the one concern. The second thing I wanted to bring up is in regards to the mirrors, right? You talked about this polished, shiny metal thing that maybe you can see your silhouette is what I'm envisioning. How that occurs, and I know it's because you're looking at safety reasons, glass is being broken, and so on and so forth. Is there maybe a way that you can think about doing a plastic covering over a mirror? That, you know, there's some durable plastic coverings that are see-through that you can really bolt on to the mirrors that you can't like really penetrate through, right? That's what I'm kind of maybe hopefully envisioning, instead of, and I hate to say, those polished mirror things kind of reminds me of an institutional problem. So I want to advocate not to put those in restrooms. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how the rest of the board members feel about that, and if you guys want to have a discussion about what that looks like in our bathrooms.
Well, I tell you what, I envision, particularly in the girls' bathroom, a nice mirror. And I'm remembering this when I went out to, I think we were at Barrington, Superintendent. We were at Barrington in their bathrooms. They were excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And the bathrooms were decorated for young ladies. And I think one of the mirrors were, there was designs on the mirrors. You understand?
Yeah,
And
maybe we can have our woodshop department do a nice little frame over that. But I'm just saying, like, I kind of am not for the whole polished
thing.
mirror
Right.
stains, stainless steel thing. The ones that I'm envisioning, I've seen those. You can barely see anything, but.
Yes, so the ones that we saw on our walkthrough, we did identify the restrooms that had those. They were very similar. The mirrors with the broken glass, causing, needing replacement or potentially being used as a weapon or things like that is something that we've considered over time. Right. The first restroom we walked into was the restroom that the district invested a lot of funds to renovate at Washington campus, if you all recall, on the first floor during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look the same as it did at the start of the year. So as we go through and we're identifying these items, we certainly want the best for our students, but we also need to remind them of the expectations so that we can keep it maintained. Because the custodial staff, and Mr. Kruckerberg's not here this evening, but they keep a big inventory of soap dispensers, for example, because of the amount of times that they need to be replaced. There was a handicap restroom that we saw in one of the restrooms we went in where the door was missing because it got taken down, and the Halo devices that Mr. Wilson was mentioning, when they were first installed, there was one in particular that was knocked down. So we want the best for our students. That's what we're striving for. We just need to encourage that they maintain the space. But based on what we saw with the walkthrough with the student, and she did mention the feminine products, the fact that usually the female students have them on them. They typically, they don't want to broadcast if they need one. They'd like to do that stuff in private.
Yep.
So we had more conversations than just, this soap dispenser's missing as we were walking through the school, just navigating the day-to-day of what it's like to be a student using those restrooms. So it was very insightful. But we're trying to ensure that we can maintain what we have. reduce the amount of replacements, the repairs, also keep it nice that the students can be proud of using. So this isn't a one and done type deal. We're going to constantly be reviewing this. I don't have the brand of the feminine products that we use. We can bring that at a future meeting, but just know very specifically that the feminine products in the restrooms at the high school, middle school specifically, are no different than the other paper products: toilet paper, paper towel, hand soap. Those things need to be checked daily, and the inventory needs to be maintained as part of our standard custodial supplies.
Thank you, Deputy Moulton.
And that'll come before the board before we do the mirror replacements, right?
Well,
If you guys could have, further conversations about that.
well, it's a product that we're currently using. We want to get the items up and available. They're a standard maintenance item right now. That's how we've been treating it. So we can provide evidence of what we've done at a future meeting if needed.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more
Final question. I'm sorry.
And
It's
this goes
8:24.
back to, this actually goes back to the Halo thing.
Mhm.
And I had a community member to text me and to say that vapes is only one thing, but what about the kids eating cookies, candies, and drinks with THC? So if you can look at talking to your staff and stuff about that, because that vaping is not the only thing that they're doing, and if I'm not mistaken, and like with the liquid THC and all that stuff is coming in. So
Thank you, Ms. Anna.
And I think maybe an educational strategy is because the reality is that we as parents in the community have to know is we can't stop that. And we had students that were sent to the hospital. No one's not acknowledging that. But a cookie is a cookie. And if I'm a brownie is a brownie, liquid is liquid. And so it's very hard to prevent those type of items. So we need to educate students on their harm and make sure that we also have parents know what to look for.
Yeah.
So thank you for the detailed agenda. Again, those items are there. If you have questions, please get those in before the next meeting. We have our reports. They've been submitted for the board's consideration. I'm assuming there are no comments from either the community or the Board of Ed. With that, I'd like for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle. Second, I heard was Ms. Wozniak. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. 5-minute restroom break, and then we need to come. My goal is to be done at 9 with our student achievement. 2022. I'd like to call to order the May 7th, the
I get this side over here?
June 21st Waukegan Public Schools Student Achievement Meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez? President Ewing?
Yes, we do have a quorum. First item up is our approval of meeting minutes, May 17th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion?
None.
Roll call vote, please. Oh, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We are now at information. What I'm going to do is we have one presentation. That presentation is going to go first, and then we're going to go through the items one at a time in case there are questions from either the board or the public, but we will not be having presentations on each item. Majority of them are renewals. All of them have attachments. So the first item or presentation will be on instructional technology. Dr. Josue Cuevas.
All right, good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, community members, and colleagues. I'm going to ask Dr. Cuevas to step up and present on ABRE.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, board members, community members, and colleagues. The academics department, we implemented the ABRE solution in the past, and we're planning to renew this software solution, and also they added new functionalities that we want to take advantage. In the case that you're asking who uses it and what is it, so I just put a very quick slide. Basically, the renewal of ABRE platform solutions, for family and community engagement, the FACE department, and crisis intervention and social emotional learning departments. What is ABRE? ABRE is an easy-to-read platform for the whole child that involves social emotional learning, mental health, and tangible resources. And here, with this solution, you're going to be able to see a data platform for all stakeholders that are involved in the success of the student engagement. What is the rationale? Basically, we want to renew this solution that will benefit family and community engagement and also volunteering tracking. This is a new functionality that they have, so that now we can monitor the hours that families are volunteer at the school levels. And also they have two very important pieces, two very important keys in the functionality. That is an expansion of the data dashboard that they provide, and also insights on behavior management. And the solution is already implemented. We're just renewing and adding new functionalities that will benefit the FACE program and also the crisis intervention. So the total cost is $223,000 for a 3-year contract, and this is a savings of $126,000 for the school district.
Can I ask the question?
Yes, ma'am.
It's the presentation?
Yes, and actually, if you can move to the next slide, please. Basically, this is the logistics for the implementation of this in the month of July, basically to have the kickoff. In the month of August, send a communication and roll out to principals and staff. September training, and then in October, we're going to start monitoring the system. And that will conclude the presentation.
Ms.
Yeah, I also spoke with the superintendent about the renewals, and that I was going to be asking about different contract renewals, and this is a new.
So it isn't new. We're already using it with FACE, but we're expanding it, and that's why we felt it was important to give a presentation on this, because it wasn't just what we're using for FACE. We would be expanding, and one of the things that we would be doing is, an example is the behavioral health management piece, and that was something we talked about, is how are we tracking this, how are we allowing different departments to work together, and also with our outside service providers, so that we can keep track of what students are being provided, what services, when they're provided, so that we can be more efficient with how we're providing those services. But then we have a platform that shows everyone where this student is getting these services in the district and outside of the district.
And you used this last year?
That aspect is what we're adding on.
Oh, I see.
That would be the add-on.
And so, wouldn't it be more fiscally feasible to do a one-year contract, and then if this is,
we can both talk about
if it is okay and it accomplishes what you all are looking for it to accomplish, then we add on multiple years. And in all of my time on the board, that is the way that we procedurally done things.
Yeah.
And I understand this is a new time, new administration, all of that, but money is still the same.
Agreed.
And I'm just wondering, because I have questions regarding all of the contract renewals, and because I want to see the data that supports the renewals, that they are doing what they say they were going to do, as well as what if they're benefiting the students and the district for the money that we are expending to them. And that's our job as a board, to evaluate the programs and contracts and stuff, to make sure that the funding that we're approving, and we're getting our money's worth.
Yes.
And so I guess that you can take that statement, and I won't have to reiterate it again with all of the rest of the renewals.
Sure. I'll speak specifically to the 3-year for this. I had a discussion, initially it was a 1 year. We had a lengthy discussion regarding the length. And if you look at the timeline with implementation, and the fact that really it's about 6 months with the implementation, we really wouldn't be able to assess the effectiveness of it within that 6-month period of time. And the other benefit, and then I'll let Josue add on here, is the $126,000 savings over time. It was extremely significant, and so we took that into consideration. Josue, did you want to add to the implementation piece?
Yeah, that's correct. It's more beneficial, for the implementation timeline, just to do it and provide training. We're looking like 6 to 8 months, and then we need to then look at how we're going to measure the data. So 1 year basically is not going to be enough time, being realistic with all the activities that we have in the district, just to do a full monitoring. The 3 years, the company basically, they offer 1 year or they offer 3 years. There's no 2 years basically service for them. I asked that question very specific, and they said most of the school districts that are coming and using this implementation, they're taking advantage of the discount of the 3 years, and it's $126,000.
So you're basically getting the 3rd year for free.
That's correct.
So, well, okay, and that's good. Okay, and so I know I am expecting to see data that's going to give evidence that $223,370 was well spent. Okay, for student enhancement, student academic, student improvement with these things.
All right, we're going to go back up to the top and go down. I'm going to call each item up. So renewal of the Remind software. The information is there along with the price. Are there any questions? B, approval to attend Dream Partnerships Conference 6/27/22 through 7/1/22 in Portland, Oregon. C, requesting approval to attend Network for College Success National Freshman Institute.
Wait a minute, I had a question about that.
C,
About B. Wait.
approval to attend the Dream Partnership Conference. What's the question, Ms. Hannah?
Yeah, I'm just looking, yeah, okay, I see it here. Okay, if the cost was, the cost is $2,569, why are we only paying for Miss Fulton for $1,900? Why not the entire? Why wouldn't the district pick up the whole thing?
She's being reimbursed for the amount, I believe. She can explain further if need be, but
Yeah, I'd like to know because we pay for, unless I misunderstand.
no, she's getting fully reimbursed for this. This is through CLC, I believe, correct? CLC invited her and has invited her for the past several years. So she needed the approval because of the timing, just didn't line up with our meetings, and so she is being fully reimbursed for everything. Correct?
I believe it's a grant. Am I correct? That Ms. Fulton, why don't you come up and speak? I think we're insinuating that we would not want to pay the full cost. That was not the ask. The ask is, Ms. Fulton, I'll pass it to you. Thank you.
I only go to one conference a year, and this is with CLC. They pay for it this time because it was 5 days. I had to come before you guys to get it approved. The tickets were very expensive about time I found out about it. They're gonna pay, the original was $1,900, but they're gonna pay more for the extra day and per diem. So we asked the district just in case I went over. I don't think I'm gonna go over, not at all. So they will be paying the full amount.
Thanks, Savannah.
And if we
Thanks,
had
Ms.
to pay
Fulton.
for it, right? That was all. So thank you, Ms. Fulton,
Yeah.
and thank you for that, Ms. Hannah. Next item, we were at C, request for approval to attend Network for College Success. D, International Baccalaureate Professional Development.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Bergozamo.
I am excited to see this on the agenda. I know I got an update on the Whittier portion of that, in which we are now in year 2 of 3 for Whittier. And I see Clark will be starting this coming year, will be year 1. But I didn't hear any information about Edith Smith, and I see Edith Smith is on here. So I don't know if you can tell us the timeline for when Edith Smith will be up and rolling for IB.
So this is very early, and so our plan is to roll this up because this is the primary years program, and then moving into the middle years program, and then into the high school program, right? And so this is very early, and we're going to be, first is really informing, and that's what we're doing in this instance. So very early in the application process.
And every school will go through a 3-year journey before it's a go live?
That's the progression from the International Baccalaureate. That's the progression that they have. I mean, it's a preparing to, the application process is very lengthy and involved, and it really we need to make sure that the staff is on board and it's getting buy-in first, but then the process itself, it takes a couple years. So yeah, but we're starting now, so that, and we had discussions with Ms. Yvonne, and she was very excited about participating. So that's the next step.
And this is for our families out there that have students in the gifted programs, because everyone knows that the gifted program is at John Lewis, right? And so what does that look like, the gifted program, compared to the IB program? Is it similar, not similar? Is it gifted, not gifted? Just trying to...
I'm so glad that you brought this up, because this is kind of an opportunity to deal with some kind of misconceptions about what IB is and is not. It's for everyone. International Baccalaureate is for all, and it is for all students and for all ability levels, and I think that's important that it's open to all the students at each of these schools. One other thing to reiterate here is that these schools, these principals initiated this. This is work that they wanted to do and to engage in, and the International Baccalaureate, how is it different than gifted? It is very there are aspects of its curricular programming that have to be followed. There are different expectations, but I can have Miss Jennifer Rice de la Sanchez expand on that if need be. But really, it is not. It's inclusive for all students.
And so it is like a gifted program, but not really a gifted
It
program.
is not a gifted
Okay,
program. I want to reiterate that
Okay,
point
perfect.
one more time. It is not a gifted program.
Thank you for
Do you want to expand on the programming options?
What I would do is, I know this is requesting consideration to attend the conference, is that I don't know what our agenda will look like next week, but maybe during superintendent's time, we actually just present on the IB program as opposed to the PD piece.
Sure, we can revisit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be a good idea, and that's part of the planning discussions to talk about really making sure that we have stakeholder involvement at each of those schools, so that there's they have a full understanding of what IB is and is not. But I'm really glad, again, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because it is not a gifted program.
Mm-hmm.
It's for all students.
And the MTSS and social science lead, are those two people from Edith Smith, or is that more Lincoln Center wise?
Those are, one of them, they're both teachers, but they are coaches, right? So one has a social science lens, which really lends itself to IB and to the units of IB. And also the MTSS coach is the coach that supports the IB school specifically. So it is also important that they're woven into the full understanding so that they can continue to support the schools, as well as the social science lead.
I'm excited, and I can't wait to hear Edith Smith's official announcement. Those were all my questions, Board President.
Thank you.
We,
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Is there any way, I was just thinking about this as I was looking at the agenda last night, and I was just wondering, all of the professional development requests, and I was thinking about them in reference to the reports that that's out there now in terms of the airports and flight delays and flight cancellations and all of that stuff, right? And we have a number of professional development trips that we're taking, right? That people are going to be taking, and I was just wondering if it would be more economical for the school district to bring those people, or the people that are going to the that are going to present to our people going there, if it would be more feasible for us to bring them here.
So I think that's a really good thought, and I think we can consider that when we're looking at professional development, and it often depends on the size. So some of these people going or presenting, they're hosting hundreds of people.
I understand.
But like you said, Ms. Hannah, I think that is definitely something to consider, especially considering the number, when we have a large number of people, that it might be more economical to have someone come in here. So we'll definitely, I think that's a really good suggestion. So we'll consider that on our team when we're doing it. And again, it depends on the size.
Right.
If it's 5 or less, it probably wouldn't make sense.
Right.
But if we have 20, 25, 30 people going, that might be something that we can consider. So
No,
definitely
because-
bring that up in our ASAP meeting tomorrow.
Because we have places where we could host
Right.
professional development.
Sure.
And that has its
seminars
place,
and stuff.
right. That has its place, but this is the global conference.
Right.
Yeah,
that
no,
these teachers, right, and it's
Right.
networking
No, I get
for
it.
across
Right.
the country and what
I
all
get it.
IB is
And
about.
around the world, there's actually 1,700 participants
No,
from
I
29
get it,
countries.
and I wasn't necessarily talking about this.
Just in general, yes.
I'm
And
talking
yes.
about us
Sure.
in general.
Right.
Right,
Oh,
right.
got it. Okay. Because I was going to say that's like us bringing Cube to us.
No, I
right?
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. It is. So we'll consider it especially when it's larger numbers, and we can house them definitely. We have plenty of space to host, and we might be able to host other districts too.
Absolutely.
Yes, good idea.
They can pay us.
PBIS vending machines. With this great initiative, I would say, again, budget to how we continue to make sure that we have books for it, and then if we can also look local to see if we can even stock it with some of our local authors.
So we're going to do it a little bit differently than Carmen. Carmen gave us the idea, but we're going to make it more specific to high school so that it's more appealing to them.
Gotcha.
So we're working on that right now, but we wanted something tangible that students could actually see. So that's just another piece of what we're trying to do to enhance PBIS at the high school and the middle school. But we know that it has to be a little bit different than what's at the elementary. And we
Right.
definitely want to use different incentives that we can pull from locally, gift certificates, other products.
Sweatshirts.
Exactly, swag, exactly.
You know,
Yep.
And
So,
don't forget
yeah.
Takis and hot Cheetos.
We got it. No, we can't.
All that. Do that.
All right. No food incentives.
It's an
I got a
incentive.
question.
No food incentives.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Ms.
Okay, I love the concept. Okay, PBIS vending machines, right? Got that. Love it. Now, we only have one that I know of in elementary, and that's in Carmen. So, if it's working, wouldn't Miss Rodriguez, wouldn't you want one in your school?
So
And Mr.
we did discuss that. I just want to let you know we did discuss it, and that is something we talked about, the expansion. We wanted to focus specifically on middle and high school because of the metrics and because of our renewal of and the misconceptions around how we're using. Thank you. So. Hero.
Oh, yeah.
Hero was being we thought this was a good tie-in. So we did not forget about the other schools. We just want to focus on making sure that we're starting the year off right and that there's a new connection to what Hero actually is, right? So, but yes, we didn't forget about any of the elementary schools.
All right, item F is there. G, purchases, renewal of responsibility. H, I, Clearview professional development request. Approval of to teach contractor for co-teaching.
Now, where? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Just one quick question on this one. I didn't see the timeline for go live. If you have a timeline as to when you go through all of this, when it'll become effective in our school buildings.
For Jay, for the two teach one.
Yep.
Jay. Oh, yeah.
Yep, we're going to the to teach.
And Dr. B, if you don't have that information, we can send that to the board.
This is a
tomorrow. They
renewal,
wanna
isn't
know-
it? This is ongoing.
This is ongoing.
This is ongoing professional
okay.
development for co-teaching.
Oh, this is not the one where it helps you to write IEP.
That should be on here. I think that's the next one.
Yeah, I got questions.
No,
about
that isn't the
too.
next. Yes, Go Book is the next one.
Go
And
Book,
that is,
Yes.
that's live right now, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's currently live right now, too.
Oh, okay, and that's just a renewal. Okay. I'm good.
These are all, yes.
I'm good to go. Thank you.
All right, item K, approval. What's your question, Ms. Anna?
The Go Book. Oh yeah. Now, how many people have been trained on Go Book?
All
Because
DL
I am hearing that it's only been 2 teachers at 2 schools, and so
All DL staff, teachers, related service folks have the subscription and have opportunities to be trained, and we're actually,
Right.
yeah.
Right now, I understand that everyone has the opportunity, but this again is for a second year renewal. Okay,
Yes.
we're in the second year of using Go Book, and I'm just being totally honest. Okay, I was told and being told that there's only a couple teachers, DL teachers, that have been actually trained on Go Book, and
Can we take that back and confirm, and
I
then come
can
back
get
to
you dates,
present?
numbers,
Yep.
I can get you usage
Thank you.
data, I can get you the plan for creating
Perfect.
teacher leaders to increase our use of it.
No, and
Yeah.
all of the will do, that's irrelevant. I want to know, in this first year that we had this, how did it benefit the teachers and the students?
So those are 2 different questions. One was about the usage and how many people are trained. Is that what you want to know, Ms. Anna? Okay, so that's question 1.
And number 2, how did it benefit the first year? How was it successful for students and the teachers?
Is this the, I just want to make clear, is this where we put our IEPs? Is this where they're creating
No,
IEPs?
that's Embrace. This is a tool that we use to help write better IEPs, SMART goals.
That's what I thought it was.
They're tied to
That's what I
the
meant.
curriculum
Yeah.
and brings universal design supports to the gen ed. So it's
And
multiple.
Superintendent, I've been getting reports.
So Ms. Hannah, if you've gotten a report, can you please just document it in an email and then we will deal with it?
I will.
I
will.
If you just give us the, what the issue is, we can deal with it.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Dr. Bree. Just give us the usage and how many people have been trained.
Yep.
All right. Next up is the approval for the bilingual speech and language evaluator.
Oh yeah, and I got a question about that.
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Okay, and I'm looking at my notes here. Were all the bilingual screenings necessary? Now I'm going to ask that. I'm asking that only because, and I think it was Ms. Leguizamo who had made the comment about students being put in bilingual, and they didn't need to be put in bilingual. And I know we used to have issues with students being put in bilingual and their parents did not want them in bilingual. And so that's how my question came about. Were all the bilingual screenings necessary? And secondly, what is the difference between a screening and an evaluation?
Sure. So first, this is not about bilingual services. This is about evaluation for speech and language services for our students who are bilingual. And so so the screenings are to look for students who may be at risk for speech and language and communication issues. It's very hard to tease out, is this a disability or is this a language issue? So we do, psychologists and speech paths work
very closely together on these issues, and so that's part of it. And so the screenings are looking for at-risk, whereas the evaluations are done for IEP eligibility for students who, whether it comes through Child Find, early childhood, you can see 13% of students already screened that we're projecting for next year. So evaluations are for bilingual students who would need these services through an IEP.
And we are paying, we're paying this contractor, this independent contractor, $177,000?
No.
Really?
I have to look.
Where
Maybe Mike.
is? Wait.
I'm trying to pull it up, but she's actually capped at 25 hours per week in a certain amount.
What am I, am I looking at the wrong one?
You're looking at the wrong one. You're looking at gold books.
Gold book is 177?
I believe
Yeah.
she's at 100,000, capped at
She's
100,000.
capped at 100,000.
Of course, if we needed, we
Yep.
could agree with her to amend that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we're hoping to hire 2 new bilingual speech evaluators, actually, so that'll be helpful.
So
Or
that we won't
speech
have to
paths.
use this.
You can see the amount that we've increased over the last 3 years. We still need Colleen. She works incredibly hard to get everything done, but we have a very large need.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Bubbles.
Did I get my question answered? The difference between a screening and evaluation.
What's the difference between a screening and evaluation?
I think the questions that Ms. Hannah were asking were directed towards the bilingual and multicultural department. What Dr. Bubbles was talking about was how this person was going to assist with screening of students that have IEPs but that are also bilingual, and so that's why the screening would be part of that, and also to assist with the evaluation for the IEP.
Okay, because
That this is specific to the IEP. You were asking, I believe that you were asking about, in general, about screening and people being assigned to the bilingual program. We can answer those questions, but it's not related to this particular, and I want to make that very clear, it's not related to this particular item here, this information item. But we'll take those questions and we'll get back to you.
well, no, it is. It is related to.
Well, then I believe that I answered that question with when Ms. Callahan-Wozniak posed that, and I'll reiterate one more time that this is specifically for the use of students that have IEPs but are also considered bilingual. And so if there's a need to evaluate them in the native language, this person would assist with that.
That's correct.
And the screenings. And so it's 2 processes.
So it would be, you're right, it is 2 processes. That's right. So with the initial screening and then with the evaluation as well. Correct.
So yes, it is.
But I wanted to make the difference between the screenings and the evaluations that occur in the bilingual and multicultural department as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I was
Okay,
talking specifically.
then I apologize, I misunderstood.
Thank you,
Ms. Hannah.
that. And reason I'm asking that
Sure.
is because Ms. Michaels, this is involving her contract.
That's correct.
Right, and so that's why I asked, what was the difference between a screening and an evaluation?
I hope it cleared it up for you now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we are at M, the graphing calculator, apps for Chromebook, and Carnegie Learning Professional Learning. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Shington, for M.
Just curious why we're looking at 5,000 units.
Should be more like 7.
And
Yeah.
why are we looking at 5,000 units? I'm gonna probably guess, probably at best, class at the high school is 1,100, 1,200 at most.
That's one grade level.
Well, no, I'm just saying one grade. So if it was 11 or 1,200, that's, say, only 4,800.
So that, sorry. So it is a large number, but I also want to remind everyone too, is that we're expanding the algebra into 8th grade. So we also have 8th graders that will be taking algebra. We already have some. We're going to expand that.
Okay, but that would even be great and fantastic. But the use of a TI-84 graphing calculator is not needed for algebra. I can totally attest to that. That's
It's a pretty sophisticated.
that is a.
It is.
So we can follow up. We can follow up with the math. Our math department's not here.
He's
but
right there, isn't he? Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Science,
No,
right?
he
Okay,
left.
science. I'm sorry.
No, he left.
they're not here. No. So we can follow up with you, but yes, we'll follow up on that.
And I mean, right now, are we requiring parents to purchase them? When I was in school, we had to buy them in 8th grade.
Well, that's why we're not requiring parents to buy them. And we are, and Mr. Shinkton is right. They're not solely used for algebra. They're used in geometry too, I believe, and in testing. Okay. So, but we'll get you an accurate number, Mr. Shinkton, and the board.
It is now approved for testing, the app? Because I think like when the first year it kind of came out, when we were doing Chromebooks, the app for calculator was not approved for testing.
Oh.
Mr. Foster.
As far as the testing, I'll have to get it to you from Mr. Cole, and or if Matt knows. However, this is really specifically to be pushed onto all of our students' Chromebooks so that they do not have to purchase it, that they can practice it, and it's for access to this calculator that is important to their classroom for the coaching of it and so that they can access it at home.
Yeah, I agree, because I mean that was something that I know that when I first came on board that was something I was really pushing forward to make sure we got the app, but I didn't know that I knew that we had an issue with testing. I think that was what was brought up about 3 years ago. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Ian, Carnegie Learning Professional Learning Services. O, renewal of Gaggle. P, ITS renewal for T-Mobile hotspot services. Q, Robbie Lightfoot professional development request. P, the FileWare yearly renewal contract approval. S, renewal for LinkedIn technical knowledge training. T, renewal of Entrado and school messenger system. U, the yearly renewal of Microsoft contract. V, professional development at leading professional learning communities hosted by Network for College Success. W, approval to attend the 12th Annual National Summit for Courageous Conversations.
I looked at that, and shouldn't there be more individuals attending that conference aside from
Do you want to come?
from Miss Fields? There should be other people that should be attending, and I know that
I'll ask Miss Tasia Fields to
Miss
come.
Schwartz is attending, but there's other people that would benefit to go to Courageous Conversations in Washington, D.C.
So, Ms. Hannah, may I ask, what are you making that statement by? So, who do you think should go? Because
No, I don't
believe the
know.
team has
I'm
been
just-
very right.
I don't know.
The team has been very thoughtful of who attends and who goes to what PD, etc. And these are the people that they're stating that are going to go to the Courageous Conversation National Summit. I believe it's in Washington, D.C.
Go ahead, Ms. Fields.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to hear.
So as you all know, I'm a department of one, right? So we're able to share human resources here by collaborating with other departments. So this is why myself and Barry Schwartz is going, because she's worked this year as my equity specialist. So as of right now, all I have budgeted for is for myself and her to go. But you all received an email about the Courageous Conversation Academies, and we have had several of our administrators, board members sign up and attend those initial sessions. So this is an extension of that by going to the conference, and then perhaps next year we'll bring more people on board.
Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is renewal of Hapra. I don't know how to pronounce that one.
Board President,
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Lozano.
unfortunately, I have to go back to item P as in Paul,
Okay.
if there's no questions on this one.
Now, can we go back to P?
Yeah, I got a question
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
regarding the IT local funds. There's a bunch of the things that were coming out of that, and I don't see anyone from finance here, but I just was wondering about that fund. Maybe Dr. Cuevas?
Ms. Hannah, all these are renewal contractual obligations that basically we budget for them on a yearly basis, and so
Okay.
they're being budgeted for.
So they're in the budget.
That's correct.
And they're coming out of IT.
That's
funds.
correct. From the ITS budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Now, you said you had a question back up at P. Go ahead, Ms. Lozano.
Yes, thank you. So Dr. Cuevas, this will probably be for you as well. This is for the renewal of the T-Mobile hotspot services, right? And so I just wanted to confirm, we're looking at 2,235 devices or the 10,847?
These are great news for the district. So the information technology department, in collaboration with T-Mobile, we applied for a grant. It's called the 10 million project. So we receive full funded for an additional year to extend the services to the students that are using the hotspots. The condition is that we need to pay this, and then the FCC will reimburse the full amount to the school district. So it is basically we're getting an extra year at no cost.
That's great.
And that is for how many quantity of devices? Because I'm looking
It's
at,
like 2,220 something devices.
okay, so that's the 2235, not
yes.
the 5244 or the 1087. There was a lot going on in there. Okay, so, and I know I asked for this previously, and I don't believe I've received this report yet, but have we identified that each of these devices are being utilized?
We did a report, and after the pandemic, once we return to the regular classroom, the usage of these hotspots they went lower. And so we have approximately, it's like 800 to 900 students that are consistent using this, and then the remaining hotspots, it all depends on the needs, but consistent, there's like 800 students.
And real quick, I just want to add on, we discussed this and we made the determination that we'd keep that same number that way, because if students needed access, similar to the calculators, part of what we want to do is make sure that we're providing access to our students and families.
Right, and have we been communicating with the Waukegan for Connect? I'm probably butchering that organization's name, in regards
Connect
to...
Waukegan.
There you go, Connect Waukegan.
I assist to those meetings on a weekly basis. They're fully aware.
Okay, perfect. They must be really excited about
Yes,
that.
they are, and actually we're joining forces with them in the communication, because there are other options for families in Waukegan that also that we want to promote those options to families that do not have students in the district.
Thank you. Those are all my questions, Board President.
Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, and in terms of the hotspots, in like doing inventory and so forth, are you also inventorying like the different child care agencies that through the pandemic they were also given like access to hotspots because our children
No, we only
the school
inventory the devices that we provided to the students.
Okay.
So I guess the question, can we confirm, is that at daycares, were they using a hotspot that was assigned to the child, is I think what Ms. Hannah is saying? Or was there like the Boys and Girls Club that we give them 20 to use? So if
Right.
we can just confirm that. and
We can
report
confirm that. We can double check the numbers.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Riddle?
Dr. Cuevas, my question on that, I read something that the government was, because of the pandemic and people not having access, especially in country areas, in outside the main cities, that there was a program going to be coming out where all families, all students could get access for just about
And
free.
these are the options that we're joining forces with Connect Waukegan, that we're going to promote
So
those
the-
options. And actually, Connect Waukegan, they're already
So that would
doing
be
that in the
internet,
community.
not just hotspots, but internet.
Correct.
Right.
They're
So you're
different.
working on that. Okay.
There are different programs that are available.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
And we appreciate Dr. Cuevas for sitting on that committee and coordinating with the city and other stakeholders around those resources. With that, I would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Riddle, second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.